I'm David Lough, president of the Downtown Sarasota Condominium Association, and welcome everybody to our board
10
meeting.
minutes to 5.
And those of you on Zoom, would you please mute? We're getting some background noise there. And a sound check, we're okay for you on Zoom? Yep, okay, good. All right. All right, declaration of quorum. I see everybody, and I believe Peter, you, Roger, you are on Zoom there somewhere? Roger Berry?
He's not yet.
Not yet, okay. But I know he was planning to attend, but that aside, we have everybody, including our newest board member, Judy Miller, welcome again, with us so we can declare a quorum if we might. Secretary's report, Judy, between you and Jamie, I think, Judy, what do we have?
Well, hello everybody. I'm sorry I can't be jotting down your names as I take notes because I haven't been introduced. I haven't memorized names yet. So Jamie will help me and eventually I'll overcome all of that. And I think that part of my job here is to call for approval of the minutes of the board meeting on March 2nd. I received those in my packet. I assume everyone else did too. Are there any concerns or questions about what's in those minutes? Any revisions?
I'll move we accept it on Alan Friedman.
Thank you, thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.
Thank you very much. So we've got moved second. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Yay.
Nice going.
Thank you, Ken. I have to note that down. And then we have a need for a kind of a review of what was a very brief members meeting on March 24th, as you recall, just following the public forum with Jenny Rowe. It was a kind of pro forma meeting, but nevertheless fulfilling our bylaws. It was held as required. So to recap that, perhaps, David, you could do that. It was really just kind of a pro forma meeting approving the minutes of the last annual meeting. These have to happen every year at, I guess, the same time. And election of the re-election to the board of all those present, I gather, and newly elected myself, Judy Mower, and you graciously said okay, and I think that's kind of the recap as I
think that about does it.
Motion to
approve.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Approved, Bob.
I'm sorry, Alan.
Second, Alan. Got it. Anything else?
I'm sorry, what were you motioning to approve?
We are, that's right, it's not a
There's nothing
necessary,
to
we don't have
approve. We
to
don't have
accept, there are no
minutes to approve.
minutes. It's just a verbal
She just
review, am
was
I
giving
right?
updates.
Is there any need?
We were so anxious to make your
Just
life.
So if you accept that that is a good enough review of what happened at that meeting, then I guess we just go on from there. Okay, all right, all set.
Next item of business, treasurer's report, Clark.
Yes, our sale upon balance as of this afternoon was $18,657.61, subject to change.
And the other thing we wanted to do during this segment was the bank signer resolution with with me as president, and I didn't have it last year. But what has been typical is that I would be a signer along
The
with
resident
you.
will be the signer.
Right.
And I have a credit card.
All right.
The SCA account, and Patrick will be, give up his card and his ability to sign checks.
Okay.
Which I assume is okay.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this, and should this be put in the form of a
There is a formal resolution statement required by the bank that I would assume that they had that from Sable Palm Bank. And it will need to have, I assume usually has attached to it minutes of the board meeting where that was approved. So we need a resolution that closely resembles what's in the Save Palm Bank format. Said the board approves adding, and are you saying adding President David Lough and Vice President Jamie Still as signatories? And removing.
No, we're gonna,
No, you're adding Jamie?
no, do you think we need to add a third person?
It's up to you. I mean,
It has been the past practice to have the president and vice president
well,
and treasurer.
it was more that fact that, yeah, that it was.
Well, it should be a case that the president is out of town and you need two signatures because of the amount of money.
Okay, so we'll then,
Except we don't need two signatures. Unless you want to,
I think
It's
we
the two.
take care of this by, I make a motion that we comply with the resolution as presented by Sable Palm Bank shortly to become Seacoast on May 7th. And that we add as signatory Jamie Still and remove as signatory Patrick Gant.
we have to add.
And Dave, okay, and David.
Yeah.
okay,
I second that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I got a second from
Um,
Patrick, and I'm sorry. the
Hey,
gentleman-
Judy, I'll send you a motion.
Peter Fanning.
Thank you very much.
I'll send
Peter.
you a
If do
motion.
that, I'll make sure it gets in there. Okay.
All right, that said, new business wise, Jamie, can you help us with the introduction of our guests?
Oh, yes. This is Brendan Reagan, the artistic director for Urbanite Theater. So if you guys haven't been to a show, you absolutely need to go to a show. They're absolutely fantastic. I'm sure as a lot of you can attest. Let Brendan talk more about Urbanite.
Sure, yeah. And I just want to say thanks to Jamie, who's like nonprofit board extraordinaire. I don't know if you know all the things she does. She's also on our board over there. So thank you for having me. I love coming and talking to groups, particularly because I live downtown and in the Rosemary district, and I work downtown. So I share your love for downtown Sarasota. And Urbanite Theater is a professional black box theater. I always like to start these by just asking who's been to Urbanite Theater before.
Season ticket.
Season ticket holder, awesome, and some on there too. Yeah, I'm noticing some names that look familiar on the Zoom board. Well, great. Well, y'all know what we do, and I'll just introduce our work to everybody else. I originally came to Sarasota to go to grad school at Oslo Conservatory. So, I got my training there, and I joined the rep for a season at Oslo Rep, and I quickly discovered that Sarasota was much more of an arts town than I realized. Performing arts, we have 4 professional theaters, ballet, opera, orchestra, the Van Wezel Touring Hall, all these amazing locations. But what we didn't have, at least as of around 8 years ago, was a professional black box theater that was doing contemporary, challenging work. And that's my favorite kind of theater. The New York off-Broadway style theater, Chicago storefront style theater, the London pub theater, the smaller work where you get to be closer to the actors. All the plays are always brand new. Not that there's anything wrong with something like Showboat or Hello Dolly. Those are great plays, but they're the opposite of what we do. Frequently, our plays are written in the last year or two. Our oldest play that we will ever do is 5 years ago. So we do everything that's, we produce only plays that have been written in the last 5 years, which means often that the content of our shows, I'm smiling because those of you who have come know this, can sometimes be more challenging. People like to call us edgy or provocative. I like to say we're theater for an HBO fan. So if you like new things, you don't mind a little adult language or, adult content of other kinds, you'll fit right in at Urbanite. And we bring in professional artists from all over the country. So I'm going to pass some postcards around. But for instance, right now we have a 4-person show. And so all 4 of those actors, the director and the playwright, were all from out of town. They're from all over the country, from as far as Buffalo, New York, all the way out to San Diego, California. And we do these nationwide casting calls so that we can bring the best, most exciting theater artists to Sarasota. We're in kind of a funny place if you haven't been there before. We're tucked away behind Kawa. So if you know where the Whole Foods is, right across the street, there's Kawa. And in the back of Kawa is where of that building, 1487 2nd Street, that's where we built our theater. It's a little 70-seat black box theater. And for those of you who are not familiar with that term black box, if you were to go to a theater like the Van Wezel or Oslo Rep, traditionally we call those theaters proscenium theaters, right? We have this kind of imagined arch around the stage, that's the proscenium arch, and it divides the performers from the audience. You know, it's almost like a movie, but your performers are just past that proscenium arch. The seats are always in the same place, and they can be humongous, right? Several thousand seats or 400 or 500 seats. A black box has flexible seating. There's no one place that the seats go, which means that we radically transform the whole entire space every time we do a show. So one day you might walk in and it's a collapsed mind. The next day it's a classroom. The next day it's a cocktail lounge. And if you come and see our next show, it's a haunted Airbnb. So, and we'd like to change the environment so that the experience every time you come in is different. So we have to apologize. There's no favorite seat. You can't say I'm always in the third row right in the middle, because the seats, we don't even always have a third row sometimes. But that's part of the fun, is that you get to be just 4 or 5 feet away from the performers. There's no gap of space separating the audience and the performers. And every time you walk into the space, it's a new, exciting environment. So that's black box theater. Traditionally, they're painted black, so they help the imagination transport you to different times and places. But like I said, at Urbanite, we really work to transform the whole theater so it feels like you're walking into a new environment every time that you come. So that's a little background on Urbanite. Are there any questions about what we do or who we are? We opened in 2015.
Is it an equity theater?
We use equity actors for most productions, if not all but maybe 1 or 2. Officially, we're a non-union theater, but we have my co-artistic director and I are both equity, and we hire equity actors for every show, basically. Officially, no.
Is that because of the size of the theater?
It's because of the required costs that are difficult to make up when you're so small. And equity doesn't let you work on a contract according to your size. They only, for the type of contract that we would have with them, which would be a small professional theater, they make you work on a contract based on the number of shows that you have. And because we have really great interest and a lot of enthusiastic supporters, we have to perform at least 6 times a week. And that puts us up on a level with theaters that have 200 or 300 seats. So it's hard to make that up with 70 seats, you know? So we're in a little bit of a gray area with them. We work on what's called a guest artist contract. And so we hire professional equity actors all the time, primarily. And we just have to ask them every show if it's okay if we do it. So it adds a little paperwork to us, but otherwise we're functioning kind of the same.
Where do you house your visiting actors?
That is a great question, because housing is a nightmare right now. We rent a 2-bedroom apartment, so we can always have year-round in the Gillespie Park area. So we have a 2-bedroom apartment that we can either house a director or actors in any time of the year. Then when we have more actors than that, sometimes we rent from the Opera. They have that great housing in Rosemary. Sometimes before the pandemic, we would ask certain donors who had extra space if they would put up guest artists. We haven't done that since then, because that's we're not quite there yet, I don't think. And this year we're just renting a lot of Airbnbs, which have been astronomically expensive. We can't keep doing that. So long-term goals, we hope to be able to house people more and own our own housing.
How many shows are you doing in the season?
In this season, there's 4.
I'm into this meeting
That's
now.
only because we started about
I
halfway
went
through.
down there, learning how to set up the equipment that we're gonna be using tomorrow.
But then you don't want to stay for the meeting.
No, because you
Would you mute, please, on Zoom? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Traditionally, in a full 12-month calendar year, we'll do 5 shows plus a new play festival. That may go down to 4 in a new play festival, because the length of our runs is getting longer because our interest is growing. So it makes it hard to do the 5, because you'll end up having to overlap quite a bit. And then housing is twice as complicated. So right now, probably we produced most of the year except for the down months that most organizations in Sarasota shut down, like August and September. So yeah, we're almost year round.
I have a question. Is there an alliance of black box theaters? You know, like more, is there, do you have a partnership of sorts with other similarly sized theaters with the same kind of mission?
That's a great question. There are a collection of black box theaters that are not anywhere near as tightly associated as the Lough theaters are, because they're operating under contractual agreements. That's what, to become a Lough theater is a designation with the Actors Union. So that's what ties them all together. They all have to follow the same rules. That level of administrative connection doesn't exist for black box theaters. There's sort of a league where we can communicate with each other, other national organizations that are similar to ours. But otherwise, it's sort of up to the artists to just stay in touch with each other. But of course, that's where we find our great work. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Free Fall Theater up in St. Petersburg. Another tremendous smaller theater. They have, I think, 100, 150 seats. So they're a little bigger than we are. But we're collaborating with them on our current show, Skeptic and a Brewha. We're performing it here, literally picking up the whole entire production, including the set, and moving it up to St. Petersburg for another run there. So they do collaborate sometimes.
Other than ticket sales, which kind of begin to cover your costs.
Right, yeah.
What are your funding sources?
Yeah, so tickets usually make up around 40-ish% of a theater's operating budget. And that's if you sell out everything all the time, which before the pandemic was very common for us. We would sell out our whole entire run. We'd have 2 or 3 people trying to get in on standby every single night. We're starting to get back to that level. Instead of being sold out 3 weeks in advance, we're sold out like 2 or 3 nights in advance now. So we're slowly starting to get back to that level of interest. We have individual donors make up a really huge part of our funding. And then grants and foundations and public support. This year, we got more governmental help than ever because of all of the resources that became available to performing arts organizations because of COVID, both the PPP and the shuttered venue operators grants, and then the state funding and the county funding as well. So the government support was tremendously important for us and all organizations our size to like get us through the pandemic, but things are going strong again now. So it's mostly tickets and individual givers. Yeah.
You mentioned being a league, and I may have missed it in your presentation. Do you have an IRS designation like C3, C4 or anything?
Yeah, we're a 501c3.
C3 nonprofit.
Yeah.
So you're not a business league then?
No. It's a loose connection of theaters that just sort of communicate with each other. So it's not the official definition of league now.
So where do you see yourself going at, looking down the road, let's say 5 years from now, or do you have future aspirations or goals, or what this is all going to look like?
Yeah, our secret sauce is small theater works that are intimate audiences. It's right there in our mission to be inclusive storytellers that also believe in the powerful connectivity of an intimate space. All of us sitting here feel very different in terms of communication than if we were sitting in like a major event hall or even a football stadium or something, and I was down on the field trying to shout up at you. The level in which people communicate is different. We believe very strongly in the power of that. So even if we were to expand, which is a question we get asked a lot, like, what if you outgrow your tiny little space? We would be looking to add space and not change our model, right? So we wouldn't want to like grow into a 300-seat theater just because we have more interest, because it would really fundamentally change what we do. The metaphor I like to use a lot is like, we have this awesome arts community, and it's like they're all amazing bakers. And what we decided is that we're going to make miniature muffins, and that was it. And that was our niche, and we were really good at it, and then everyone really liked us. If you have a lot of interest, you don't stop making miniature muffins. You don't start making giant ones just because that's a totally different formula. So yeah, we've thought about that. We still have some space to grow inside. We could do as many as 8 shows a week. That's pretty demanding on staff and actors, but we could grow more longer runs. etc.
Do you have challenges at the site that you're at right now, or are you
yeah.
very happy? So what are some of your challenges that you have?
Well, first of all, we love the location. It's an unbelievable place to be.
That's important to hear.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to hear that you don't like your location.
No, we
I love it.
love, that's the best part of where we're at. We love our location. There's, you know, the lot that's sort of, we call it the Whole Foods lot. It's not officially the Whole Foods lot, but that lot on the second and the third floor is where we tell everyone to park. We don't have any of our own parking, so that's a bit of a drag. But there's that public parking literally right across the street. So we're very lucky. And a lot of our people who come to shows walk. Like, how cool is it that people can walk to your theater? They don't have to drive up Tamiami or way out to Lakewood Ranch or something. Like, people can really just walk straight to the theater. So we love that. We have no storage space. That's really, we have like closets, you know, and most theaters have, and we do all kinds of other rentals too. So most theaters have a shop, like to build things, a bunch of storage for props, costume sets, lights, sound stuff, all of that stuff. When you're not using it, has to go somewhere. And so we rent a warehouse 3 or 4 miles away. We'd love for that to be on site in a way. We don't even have a place to put our ladders. Like, we literally have to walk around to a different part of the building and put them in a closet because there's nowhere in the theater that we can put a ladder that you wouldn't all see it if you walked in. So that's tough. We don't have hot water in our space. We just built it with running water and there's no hot water heater. So that means adding something like a shower, which Equity of course wants you to have if you've got any show that's sort of messy or sweaty. Or a laundry, like so we'd love a little more space, a little more, you know, items that help us produce, and we have to be clever and we have to like go take stuff to dry cleaning, or, you know, there's inherent challenges with, we built out to every inch of the possible space, and even that was a really small theater, so we didn't have extra space to like, you know, consider storage. And we were very fortunate to find offices in the building next door. So our offices are close. Our off-site warehouse is not so far. We also rent the artist housing and the theater and a rehearsal space. So there's a lot of, you need a lot of space to make theater.
One of the fascinating things is the demographics. There was a lot of concern, I think, among the general population, at least if not from you folks, that this is an older demographic.
Yeah.
And an edgy theater, would it succeed?
Yeah.
Obviously it has.
Yeah.
And I guess the demographic is perfectly comfortable with, you know, all the sex and nudity and everything else associated with it.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting question way back when.
Believe me, when Summer and I were on the road to opening our first show, which was very provocative, we stopped and looked at each other and said, what the hell are we doing? Like, they're gonna run us out of town.
Right.
And then that show totally sold out. We extended it. We sold out the extension.
What show was that?
That was called Chicken Shop.
I
You see that one?
remember,
Okay. And our general reaction was that people were not saying, what is this? They were saying, what took you so long? We've been waiting for this. I was in New York. I saw Off-Broadway theater. You know, all these people see the beautiful arts in Sarasota, and they noticed what we noticed was that this was missing. So yeah, we did not expect the enthusiasm at the level right away, but they were there. They were there.
Yeah.
One last couple more. Brendan, would you bring back an audience favorite, Bonita?
Oh, Bonita?
Bonita.
That was a really good one,
That was
wasn't
one
it?
of the best.
Yeah, that was. We never thought about bringing anything back because we're always like trying to find the next
I know,
new thing.
That was a one-person show. I think it's the
Yeah.
same actor. She was
She's awesome.
fantastic.
Oh, Terry, yeah. You had your hand up too. We'll do one more. Sorry.
Quick, I have not been to your theater, I confess. I'm going to try now that you've made this.
That's all right. You have a good excuse
How
now.
do you compare with the Black Coast West Theater, West Coast Black Theater, and the Players?
Yeah, so the Players is a community theater and we're professional. So we like to think that there's a difference in talent and, you know, career professionals versus people who volunteer in their free time. Not that the Players, there's anything wrong with the Players are fantastic. They're a really tremendous community theater. West Coast Black Theater is also a professional theater. What they do more traditionally, they're doing some more straight plays now, are these musicals and musical reviews. And they find these singers with these otherworldly, unbelievable voices. And we don't do musicals. We like to find that level of talent in actors and writers. So yeah, I love going over there and seeing something totally different. And their new space is so beautiful. And I think it's probably around 150 or 200 audience members. So we're quite a bit smaller than that one. It's still a very different experience, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, one more, okay.
Coming back to housing, so I know in our building, we had a person house one of the actors.
Yeah, with Barbara, yeah.
Yes. So my question to you is, do you see that being something that you guys would do again? I know COVID's kind of tricky, but since we are the Downtown Sarasota Condo Association, people may have extra space, and if they wanted to reach out to you and help you guys out with an actor, would that be something you guys would consider?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason that we haven't yet is more so because we've probably been ready for that sooner than folks who've traditionally offered their housing. And the two people that were offering before are quite elderly, and we didn't want to we didn't want to offer, we didn't even want to ask. I think we're starting to get to that point where if anyone ever had that, feeling that they may want to donate housing to a visiting artist, we'd be thrilled to start talking.
What's the duration to house a visiting artist?
So for a director, it would be 4 weeks. Those are the shorter ones. And for an actor, it would be more like 10 weeks, like just over 2 months. Traditionally, the ones in the summer are a little bit shorter. That'd be more like, 8 or 9. But yeah, and then, if they're downtown, like that's even better because a lot of these actors that we bring in are from New York and Chicago, and they don't have cars. So, not having to rent a car for them is critical in that sense. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for those of you who have not been, do it. Just do it. It's fantastic what you do, and we enjoy so much having you in our community.
I just got a promotion from you guys, the day of caring.
The giving challenge.
The giving challenge.
The giving challenge is
So you
coming
may
up.
want to think about them.
Yeah, you may want to think about that. Good note. So I'm going to leave these here. Anything that are extra, will you just grab and bring back to the office? Thank you so much. I'm going to get out of your hair so I don't hear your important information.
The secret meeting.
Yeah, it's all very highly confidential. I'm sure.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brendan.
Well, that starts the meeting with a lot of energy. That's a good thing. Okay. Moving ahead on our agenda, we had under old business, the grant sponsorship. Let's kick the can down until we get to events, and we can do it all at once, Jamie, if that's okay. City update, Kathy, what?
Yeah, as always, we have so many people here that have things that they're going to want to talk to regarding some of the things that went on with City Commission. This was on Monday. We had the art donation of One World Unite Through Diversity that Ken, I'm sure you'll be talking about in a little bit, but we were, that was a quite involved conversation with City Commission, and I could see the frustration for Ken with that. So you'll speak to that. But and then the Sarasota Performing Arts Center, that was approved by 3-2 to go ahead and partnership or have this partnership agreement with the foundation for planning, financing, design, and construction. And then before the construction begins, they are looking for another agreement will be needed for the management and the operation of it. And they're looking for public and of course private. The other thing that was a topic that got attention was the sit and lie ordinance, and we'll bring that up a little bit later. It's still on the table, but they're looking at expanding the area and the hours. That's being addressed. It was unanimously voted to examine it and bring it back. As far as the DID meeting goes, that was yesterday. They spent time talking about the extension of Fresh Friday going through September. They're going to be asking the city to help contribute to the monthly, for the funds to keep it going. It's been well received. Yeah, if you haven't attended, it's been great. And then of course, David will speak to this. He presented, which was a really nice presentation on the overview of the DSCA, and then also asking for, he gave context for the Jenny Rowe visit and asked for and received a.
Yeah, we'll talk, okay.
Yes,
well, great.
he was pulling the teeth of the commission.
Nice.
We got it.
Okay, yeah.
given that the DSCA board took action to support the partnership agreement with the city and the Performing Arts Center, since that time, I've been a recipient, not a participant, recipient of significant email traffic back and forth with the city manager and city commissioners of significant concern of many different citizen groups about the financial obligation that the city could be hung to on that. And so just to put it on the table that there is concerns out there as to whether or not that agreement is protective of the financial interests of the city too. We all want it to go forward as quick as possible. I agree with that. But there were some questions as to how hurried the agreements were for that. And they cited past history of, many of you know better than I, of history of failed projects or projects where the government had to spend more than it was obligated because the commercial interest didn't pan out the way it was initially expected. So just wanted to make people aware that we still have some issues on that.
DSCA, as agreed a month or so ago, wrote a letter of support, but not of a specific proposal.
Okay.
So just, I mean, again, the details in that agreement are pretty detailed.
Right. Who might have been aware of the other controversy that we're not involved in the detail. We expect that people involved will in fact work out the financial interest in an appropriate way, but we do want to see the program go forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
As far as President's report, the one thing I wanted to talk about as we start the new year with our new board is the need for additional committee members and to bring people into the fold, so as to speak, and get people involved for the obvious reasons, for the extra help we need, but also to serve as a nurturing ground for potentially additional board members down the road. And I'm looking for some advice. I know there's a number of people around this table with a lot of board experience, probably more than me, for methods or structures to go about that. Is that worthy of an ad hoc group of some kind, or can that be folded into one of our existing committees to go after that for the, dare I say, to some extent targeting, if you will, whether it be on a geographic basis or on a skill set basis, certain kinds of individuals that we feel could better, be assimilated into the group and add value.
I know this is a problem for every organization that I've ever been and still am involved in, is finding more people. And the only way I'm aware of to do it is to find somebody who have an affinity to a certain subject, who would express that interest in some kind of other way, and see if they would join an organization to do it. But it's very challenging. Everybody who's worth having is very busy. It's really tough. It's a tough.
Well, I think one of the challenges too is to find people who think strategically. And it's very difficult because most people don't think strategically. And this partnership agreement is a good example. It's a strategic document that people are talking at a tactical level about. So I think that would be as valuable or more valuable than someone with board experience. They think in a way that is beneficial to the board to keep them on track as to what they ought to be doing.
Yeah, I don't think board experience is necessarily a criteria. I think subject matter is more, certainly strategic thinking, but subject matter, people with an open mind, but still a specific interest. Tough to find, but they're out there somewhere. How do you do it? That's the question. How do you find them?
Well, that's an excellent suggestion, Alan. I've discovered in the last month or two, one way you find people who speak out is the e-comments appended to city council agenda items. And so you see the name and the address and the emails of who they are. And when you scan that and you see, oh, those residents are from DeMarc, or they're from the brand new Ritz Carlton Quay and the Besa. Oh, how can be arrested? Oh, they're, I guess, buyers. And so people who are speaking out are posting there. That's public information. We could scan that, pull up names and emails, and send them an email saying, by the way, DSCA is here now. And do they want to work through us to accomplish this through the committees and meetings like that? Could be a way, but that means somebody gathering that and sending out emails.
Well, I'll sign on to taking a look at some of those. Patrick, you and I have exchanged emails on occasion about some potential folks. I can start on a list for discussion, Peter.
One of the things I recognize is that we have somewhat of a random willy-nilly process, which we need to tighten up. Each one of us goes out and recruits a member. What do you tell them? Are we telling them 14 different things? I think one of the things that I suggest to other organizations I work with is you need to come up with a job description. What is a board member on DSCA? And then you need to, as a board, through an executive committee, come up and identify the kinds of expertise you're looking for. Are you looking for, a lot of organizations, we're not one of them, are all looking for board members who are good at fundraising. We don't have that so much, but there are holes in our expertise and skill levels of the board members, and we ought to identify those holes. Like I know Patrick probably could use a really good assistant or person to pass on the technology stuff to, because he's the only guy I call when I got a technology problem, and so some of those things, if we could tighten that up a little bit, I think it would be easier to take somebody to lunch and say, I noticed that you're new to the committee. This is what we would like you to do, and this is what we see you being able to help us with, and so forth. So do a little bit better recruiting job, because I've gone to lunch with 2 people now. Each have said, well, I think I'd like to be on the board. What do you do? But I'm away all summer. Will that make a difference? Well, we ought to decide that. How many meetings do we allow somebody to miss if it's a member in a condominium association? So I think we need to tighten it up a little bit.
The other thing is, I think there may be some population out there who would choose not to be on the board, but would be perfectly willing to help out
on the subcommittees. And I'm thinking about that with zoning issues and just looking at some of the, infrastructure. Well, we have the roundabout, or the traffic flow, that sort of thing.
Well, we just picked up a great person with the help of Jim Lample, who had a friend who has a legal background with homeless people in the Midwest, and suddenly she's on the homeless committee, and now and you've got to work around the city stuff. But she didn't want to necessarily be on the board yet. She'd like to feel us out with the homeless committee.
And I think
city
we're in a unique position because we have so many new people who are moving into downtown. They got a little extra free time, some of us, and they're looking for a way to get involved. It kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the mark. I mean, we have a lot of people who are involved, and some maybe a little to the detriment of their, people that live at the mark. It's like, oh my God, you live at the mark. And yes, oh my God, or you're one of those mark people. So we have that, we've got that going on. So I think it's interesting looking at the involvement. People just want to jump in, but they don't know exactly where their place is going to be. So I think maybe we find out what are the holes that we have, and think of what it is that we're looking for. Or, getting people, Jess, that she's been jumping in, and she's coming with an accountant to a thing that I have. So it's that kind of networking.
Okay, so let me take the assignment of this job description, and then maybe share that with some of you in advance of the next meeting. And then would we all be giving thought to where we do have holes? I mean, one, I think, is somebody more of an expert in zoning, and certainly the IT backroom, critical management of that backroom that keeps the trains running on time and everything with that Patrick has so ably done. That how do we build some strength and bench strength in that?
And on other boards I've been part of, it's the idea is to make a matrix. And you put across the top all of the different areas of skills, expertise, background that you would like to have on the whole. And then you can put board members down the left side and check off which of those each board member offers and see what's missing that way. And then you go out and you look for filling in those gaps with additional board members, but you could do a miniature version of that for each committee. What does the homeless committee require? What are the specific things that are helpful dealing with that topic? If you have a full story about what the committee does, why it's valuable, some of its past successes, that's a great marketing sort of tool to go out and recruit people who are really caring about that particular issue. So I think over a period of time, you can get those things prepared. And that really helps everybody be on the same page as to what they say to people that they talk to. And then you have things, handouts to distribute, and maybe they get into the right hands. So, you know, those are things to work on.
Okay, maybe you can help me in
I
some of
can,
this.
I
Okay,
can do that.
all right.
sort of. Not knowing anybody, I'm perfect.
Okay, well, thanks. Let's move on then. Committee status reports, Ken?
Okay, the Arts and Cultural Committee met on March 10th, and we had Jeffrey Kinn, who is now the leadership for this development of this new Sarasota Arts Festival. And we spent quite a bit of time with him. It was very interesting. There's a detailed summary in the newsletter. Was that published in March, Patrick, or will be April? The summary of Jeffrey Kinn's discussion with the Arts and Cultural Committee.
It would come out in our next newsletter. Will be that's on Friday, so it'll be the April
Okay,
news
all right.
update.
So it'll be on that. This is not a festival like what you're used to downtown, where a group of itinerant artists show up in town to sell their product. This is going to be a high-level arts festival to feature the best of something. We don't know quite yet what the focus will be, whether it be local organizations or national or international organizations, much like the Ringling Festival was a while ago. So stay tuned to that. Next month, we're going to have, or this month rather, April 13th, we're having Cynthia Brunel, who is involved with this Art in Common Places program. And it may fit somewhere with Alan's proposal, Art on Your Own Time. And so we'll talk about that, and maybe we'll come back with something to propose to the organization, to the board. On a couple of weeks ago, Patrick invited me to Condo on the Bay. They had an exhibit of art created by residents in the two condo buildings. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe how much. There were about 35 or 40 pieces exhibited, and they covered the spectrum. Some were oil paintings, some were acrylic, some were watercolor, some was glass, some was digital art. There was some sculpture, and there was even something of Patrick's in the show. So it was fascinating, and I met two people in particular that I really was taken with. Linda Riccici, and I talked to Kristen briefly before the meeting about, she's looking for sponsors. She's a very good artist. She's a professional artist, and I don't know whether we've ever sponsored any thing like that or not, but she's looking for sponsors for her artwork. So we'll talk some more about that. And then let's see. Kathy mentioned that Monday I was on the agenda for the City Commission for my diversity and inclusion public art work. And this has been a frustrating 5 years. And it's indicative of the fact that we don't have a process for acquisition of public art, and it's indicative of the fact that we have neither staff nor commission members who are qualified to make decisions about public art. So all this stuff came crashing down on Monday about, is the metal going to be too hot? Are people going to climb on it? Are we going to have sexual assaults inside of it? There was an incredible array of things. There need to be doors on it. So I don't know where that's going to go, but it really is a frustrating process. And I spent 2 hours on the hot seat trying to get somewhere with it and got absolutely nowhere. So we'll see what happens.
But when
with
you
that.
turned around and left the table, you had a smile on your face. It was
You
like-
did?
You did, but it was like, son of a bitch. you know?
I'm gonna get them.
Yeah.
I gotta commend you,
Yeah, you
publicly
did.
commend, you did a great job.
You did.
You were prepared, the presentation was clear and succinct, and anybody who doesn't understand what you were talking about, which is probably the five at the table that you were trying to interest. Well, I probably shouldn't say that publicly. But anyway, they're trying to understand it, but the question of trying to, shrink El Paso by 30%, which just
Blew my mind.
yeah, some of the questions, I think you're getting there. I don't think you ought to get discouraged. I think you ought to just keep pushing. I think you'll get
It's
Get it
coming up
through.
in 3 months, right? 3 more months.
roughly.
We'll see.
Yeah. Hang in
I
there.
am so discouraged that
No, don't be. You did a great job.
I'm where it's gonna go. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. On Associate Events Committee, Jamie, do you want to start
Sure.
things off?
So are we gonna start talking about the Jenny Rowe workshop?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
okay.
do a
You guys have did everybody get a copy of the,
We did the overview.
I can put that overview up.
Yeah.
there.
No,
overall, I would say it was a huge success. We pretty much kept Jenny running almost the entire time she was here. Several different events. We had breakfast, we had a trolley tour. Of course, you guys were at the event on the 23rd. Then she met with the health department, and I think one of the better attended events besides the workshop was the Bayfront Community Room with a bunch of city staff and planners. That was I thought that was a really well attended event, and people seemed very engaged. I also had some dinner and apparently a nice little sunset viewing at Patrick's house and a book signing. So I think she left pretty tired, but was very grateful for the exposure, and I thought it was very well done. I commend David and Patrick and everybody that was involved in getting her here and arranging all of the details.
And Jamie, you and your husband hosted her.
Yes,
which,
yes,
helped
it was a
and-
very
and
easy
Made
yes.
her event. I
Yes.
think in total, we counted around 170 different people. There was some duplication, but call it 170 folks that heard her message from diverse publics, diverse stakeholders, if you will, of kind of a residence kind of focus, where a panel was format was used, and I thought that went pretty darn well. I thought John Thaxton did a nice job, and then the luncheon the next day was more of a open discussion, kind of free form thing.
Yeah.
I counted 12 city staff members at the luncheon, and we had everybody from Ian Black and Visit Sarasota. We just had a whole spectrum of folks hearing her message, and I think it was well received. Patrick, can you add any comments about your take on things, or anybody?
Well, I think we, as you point out, we touched on many different facets and exposed her to a great deal, but also exposed many different facets of the city to that message. And so we'll find out, we spent a lot of money, we took a lot of time. And where do we go from here? So I think that to me is the real key thing, is we have an opportunity to really make this a cornerstone and be acknowledged as the organization that not only brought it to town, but has helped carry it forward in different ways. To me, this ending message to it is not only do these guidelines help create restorativeness but it helps to maintain or heal the social fabric of our community. And when you read words like that and you map it onto our mission, it begins to tie together that we can't be successful if we don't have a community that's working together and embracing all facets. When she talks about walkability for all, parks for all, you know, it brings up challenging questions, you know. What's the Rosemary Park for all going to look like if you take everyone who habitats within 500 feet of there? There's a real diverse population there, and can they all sit and commune and have a bumping space? It's better. So there's some interesting challenges, and I think it's an opportunity, having exposed ourselves, and thanks to David's leadership for having seen the book and saying, there's something here. And to me, the response was overwhelming. You know, if we had got a few people that showed up here, a few people that showed up there, or, you know, I was saying, fine, we did our job. We brought her in for our members meeting, checked the box, and not checked the box, but, you know, it was a good, successful event, et cetera. But I think we have a game-changing opportunity here to help underline, support some of the other key initiatives we have, whether it's the zoning or the homeless, the vagrants within the parks, and we'll be talking about how those things come together, you know, activating parks and et cetera. So I think that to me was the bottom line, is let's figure out how to inculcate this in much of what we do in our newsletters and our events, labeling things, asking the questions. Does this help us be better neighborly city? You know, things like that.
Did we get any feedback from her? Any substantial, substantive feedback on what she thought of Sarasota?
Well, she loves Sarasota.
Where she saw the
Yeah,
problems?
she, in
Yeah.
fact, she's
Right.
taking us to some extent as a case study back to her students,
Oh, really?
you know? And there is discussion about bringing her back in some manner in the future. And I think we may, Gulf Coast Community Foundation, John Thaxton got quite intrigued. And I think we have a real opportunity for that. And to Ken's point about strategic, I mean, this idea of visioning and missioning is something that I think that is not well articulated by our city's staff, you know, or commission, right? They're.
Well, she even said that we had made a lot of progress on some of these pillars, like the water city, wasn't that one of them?
Yeah.
And she said, and I think active city.
Yeah, and she was blown away by the Bay Park, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, what's evolving there. So as Patrick said, the key is going to be on thoughtful follow through and messaging. I think it went very well. On the money.
Unfortunately, I was away, so I wasn't there. But I really would be interested in her follow-up vis-a-vis her students. You know, you mentioned that, you know, she might use us as the model for further discussion with the students. If there was some way to get feedback of her feedback, it would really be interesting to us.
And we did have some frank discussions with about some of our issues or concerns about noise or homelessness or you know, matters of clean sidewalks, whatever. So she heard some of the concern areas as well as some of the areas where we're doing decently well.
I felt very fortunate to have her at my house. We went walking around, and to have somebody look at your city in a whole new light, in a way that you haven't looked at it really before, and pointing out things in my own neighborhood that I really hadn't focused on before was
Good things or bad things?
mostly good. Yeah, a lot of really good feedback, but
And she enjoyed herself. I mean, as
She
hard
did.
as we worked her, we kidded about it, and she was a good sport about it and got some time on her own in the Sunday morning. So she left a happy camper.
Did anyone from local academia take note, weigh in, become part of anything, express an opinions, or any local college person?
That was the one area that we did try and reach out to. I personally met with Dr. Larry Thompson the week before and gave him the flyer, and he said, follow up, and I sent 3 emails, and we never got anything scheduled. What we recognize is that if we can get her back on a study
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We will need to have engaged colleagues because we would need their students working with her staff to set up whatever data collection, data analysis, et cetera. One of the areas we just were talking about was the survey that we did. And if we can take our data and say, okay, here's our spreadsheet or whatever, and it has where that was took place, and send that off to her and see if she wants to work with that. And if they came up with, or help us come up with a final report from that, you know, here's the data, what does this mean and how do we use this and how can we try and do better? Then that could be a real focal point for
It would be
action.
You know, it's a natural master's thesis topic to take a look at the book, the experience of having her here and the existent zoning laws. What's the fit? What's the lack of fit? I mean, it's just a natural academic project for somebody at that level. And so it's just too bad that there just wasn't a connection made with a faculty member who could enlist a whole class as a class project or particularly good master's level student to do that sort of analysis. So,
But it was a good entry overview, and now our challenge is find the projects
yeah,
that could get funded, that could get done. And then once we have identified that, what set of skills would be best utilized for that? You know, is it design students for Ringling? Is it more data analysis, et cetera? And one of the projects that probably worth discussing here was when asked, I think it was at the Bayfront room, someone asked Jenny what she thought was having her dialogue, et cetera, what she thought needed to be done in Sarasota. And one of her comments was, you got some nice parks, but they're not connected. There's no green way to connect them. And we thought, wow, that ties in with the Bay Park's connectivity and efforts to get you from downtown to the Bay Park. So if we were to take, let's look at our parks in our neighborhood, our downtown DSCA, all of our parks, and we take 5 Points Park and say, okay, get from 5 Points to the Bay Park, you could go central, okay, through Rosemary, what's going to be there. And so you have Central Avenue, Boulevard of the Arts, and then you would have, say, Coconut and Boulevard of the Arts. And how green are just those walkways? Figure out those 1 mile distances and map it out, you know, something like that, and then get people interested and just do a pilot project around that connectivity and applying the principles that she's mentioned and everything else.
So who would be the ones, I love that concept. Who would be the ones, would it be a city function? Who could do that? Who could at least initiate?
Funded joint project, but it could be done under the cities. I mean, we've had discussions with various city staff previously with Stephen Friedman Montes on sustainability to like do heat maps of the sidewalks that are heavily walked, et cetera. Jenny talked about other air studies. You know, she's got tools, devices, things that they use to measure the clean air. So you pick corridors and you do this kind of studies of all these factors beforehand and then afterwards. I mean, she's always said she's 3 to 5 years to study. Things like that. So,
but she also said start collecting data. Do you remember that?
right. And so
Data, I think about health statistics as correlated possibly with a nearness to parks, opportunities for social support and interest sharing, et cetera. So I would map it out. I just recently had my own health physical, you know, passed with flying colors, yay. And my doctor happened to mention that the lifespan here in Sarasota is longer. I mean, it's measurably longer. Why is that? Is it because, you know, people who are going to live long naturally move here? Is there something about living here that helps? I mean, that's an interesting statistic. Somebody ought to track that. And so it's just, those are the kind of health statistics that could be cool to start accumulating and just find ways to measure. I'd also identify where's the closest program in landscape architecture? Where's the closest program in urban planning? These are academic departments. Is there anything within a drivable radius.
Well, at Reagan College is the professor, and he was professor of design and ecology, basically teaching designers how to design for the environment. So he's very much of an environmentalist in the design college. Now, planning side, I don't know, but there's data analysis at New College.
Just quickly on the money front, we had some good news. Jamie got us the grant for $3 grand. And then we were fortunate to get grants from Visit Sarasota and the Economic Development Corporation, whatever, of Sarasota County. And yesterday, $2,000 from DIT. So we covered all but about $2,000 of her visit trip, which is good, Clark, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what we had in the budget. So you came in, according to your number here, at basically $1,800.
Right.
Against the budget we had of $2,000 for this members event.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Who are we gonna hit up for the 1,800?
It's in the budget that comes out of that.
think he's kidding.
Keep it over here at St. Paul.
Okay, and then Jamie, do you want to talk about technologies helpful and hurtful? or hurtful?
I can, so May 10th, 2022 at Art Ovation. It's gonna be from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Chris and I finally put the final touches on the flyer and I think Kristen just sent it to Patrick if you guys want to share it. Otherwise, we have our moderator and all of our panelists already locked in. We have our schedule event on there. And we have 19 out of the 21, keep in mind Kristen is a core marketing as our liaison. So we've already got 19 of the 21 platinum members accepting their tables, which is good news, but there's not many more to sell. So we'll get creative on the marketing on that and try to sell some more sponsorships. They have until the last two people have until the 10th of this month to respond 30 days before we send out the flyer to everybody and everybody all the chance to register. So we're just waiting on the last few platinum members. If they don't respond, we'll sell to gold. So.
One thing I was going to mention, when we did the book signing with Jenny Rowe at Bookstore One, in conversations with, her name's escaping me, the owner, Georgia Court. We got talking about her mezzanine space for those of you who've been in there, and she's offered to make that available for DSCA events at no charge. So it may lend itself to some events. I think they have 40 seats up there, as many as 40 seats. Maybe they can get a few more. It's on a mezzanine, so if the store is open, it's exposed, so as to speak. We didn't go so far as if we were to cover the nominal cost to have a salesperson, stay on after hours. But I think that might be discussable, and it's a great location right in the center of downtown, but it's at the mark.
You put noise down and, loitering in the breeze.
Nothing's perfect, right?
Okay. All right. No, but I think it could be a great venue for
No, it really is.
for certain things, and really.
David, did we have to pay for the Senior Friendship Center?
Yeah, it was
Little bit.
$1,000.
Really?
Mhm.
It's a great space, especially with parking.
Right.
Yeah, some of these
Yes.
locations for our events, they're just skyrocketing
Yeah.
in cost. It's
And-
really getting bad. Even Art Ovation is a lot more money than.
And the people there were just so wonderful to work
Yeah.
with. Oh, man. Yeah.
Just a
Okay.
question, Patrick, do we have to have the flyer approved or do we have to have the flyer approved by the board or no? I always forget that.
I don't know, you sent around a flyer and I and other people sent back comments. I don't know if there's been a revision since or.
We just put things in bullet points, some minor revisions as you guys suggested.
We went with the same title, New Condo Association Technologies.
Yes.
Okay, it sounds like New Condo Technologies for new condos. Suggestion was new technologies for condo association, but just a
Well,
suggestion.
you guys, I mean,
What's that?
It's got a lot more appeal than maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
But I'm happy to defer to you and Kristen if you guys are happy. It's got the zing and you've run it by Clark or our ad agent.
I don't have a clue about any of this being so new. Jamie, is this on the website where I can just dig in and see
No.
the kind of event you're talking about is already there?
It hasn't, we generally don't open it up to everybody roughly 30 days before. 'cause we
I
want-
just want to know time, place, the event that you're talking about is described there enough for me to be able to.
It will be,
drop out.
yes, within literally days.
Okay.
It'll be up.
thank you, Jamie.
Yep.
Okay, Green Space Committee, Patrick.
Well, right now, the main thing was Peter had put forward a proposal to talk about it in a minute, so I think it's relating to activating the parks. And so that's one of the coordinated things we'll work with. I'll let Peter lead that effort. And then as a follow-up to the Jenny Row, which I mentioned, I think coming up with some type of inventory of our downtown parks. I know I've had lists from the Parks Department before, but I think if we were to take our list of parks that not only have the acreage, but list out the other attributes, like which of them will have fountains, which one have pavers, which one actually have grass, which have trees, which ones have water fountains, 0, except for Bay Park, which ones have benches, very few. So, kind of assessment of where we are now and then maybe updating it and seeing as we move forward for these programs. It kind of goes to what Judy was saying, what's the data? So let's actually take a hard look at the assets in our neighborhood for that. So I think that's one thing that might help as we move forward.
There's a great big master plan that Jerry Fogel put together that lists all that type of information about each park and what needs to be put into each park and how much it's going to cost.
I mean, that was part of the master plan.
No, not the master plan that was done. This is a series of individual park by park, all 71 of them in the city. It's listed out.
Yeah, there was the master plan.
I know that was done by Bart. Yeah, Bart. This was done 2 years ago or less.
Can you get a hold of that?
It's this thick, literally.
Or PDF or link to the website or?
I don't know if it's ever been put up on the website. It's so big. I mean, it's a monstrous document that they put together on inventory, and what is at each park and what needs to be put in each park.
Okay, well, let's look at
If
that.
you want to get it, I've got a copy of it, Patrick. Call me. We'll get together and I'll show it to you.
Yeah. And now do we, Patrick, anything more? Do we want to have Roger?
Roger, I'm not sure what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put up.
Roger, we had, in your backup pack of board members, there had been a 2-pager that Roger had done. Roger, you want to take it away?
Sure. Sorry, I'm not there. I'm going to miss the after part.
Such a party animal.
Jamie commented she looked at her neighborhood differently. I came back and looked at our condo differently. There was a space between our pool and our property line that led back to the bay that was wasted space. It was filled with rough vegetation. And one of the things that happened is that we finally decided to get access to the bay. We have a small beach about 100 yards long. And we successfully got the city to let us put the stairs down to the beach. And so we have this new space now, and we put down shells to begin with. But after talking to Jenny Rowe and Healthy Cities, the idea that individual condos may have an outdoor living room, a pocket park, some place that we can commune with nature. I love to go to North Lido or the South Lido and the trees or along the beach. And my wife and I biked Bobby Jones when it was open. But here was a possibility. And so here's the description with the board. The Sunset Park, Pocket Park project is a small private space, 2,000 square feet for the enjoyment of the residents of Sunset Tower. which also provides access to Sunset Bay. We're going to name it after the park that occupied this site before the construction of Sunset Towers. It was called Sunset Point. The park is in addition to providing views and access to the bay, it is available for Sunset Tower residents and guests for passive activities such as grilling, dining, viewing the bay, reading, meditation, or visiting with friends. It has an herb garden available for residents. The park has hurricane-proof or easy to move furniture grouped in such a manner to encourage social interaction, viewing of the bay or dining, umbrellas to provide shade. The park is handicap accessible, but does not have handicap access to the bay. We have more investments to make, and I think this can really turn into a rather beautiful, small pocket park. And I guess what I'm suggesting is people should look around in their neighborhood. What are the possibilities of converting some of this green wasted space into green space and for places for people to enjoy? That's it.
Well, I think it's a great idea, the Pocket Park Challenge or something like that. Beat the bushes to find a pocket park.
Can I just say, at the LNR, we spent, I forget now, I was on the board at the time, $600,000 or $700,000 and bought the property adjacent to us and turned it into a park for residents. Whereas across the street, the Renaissance chose not to, and as a result, we got David. But we have the biggest non-city owned park, I believe, in the city. It's huge. And we're just now, after all these years, starting to plant trees and starting to use it. People walking dogs always used it. But it's a tremendous park. And we just decided to spring for the money. We took out a loan and we preserved this green space, hopefully for eternity.
Yeah, but of our other 30, 40 condos, what other remnant space that is nothing now could be parkette, or whatever the heck we want to call it. But I think it's something interesting to explore. Jenny was talking about the importance of pocket parks and this, again, this connectivity, this oasis between bigger parks possibly. So, okay. Thanks, Roger, and keep us posted on how that comes along. Homeless Committee, Peter?
Yeah, this is a shared effort between the city news and the homeless committee, because it affects the city as well as a lot of people will look at this new amendment to the ordinance that was passed on first reading Monday night as an anti-homeless kind of measure, and it's been very well thought out to not be that. And I want to make that very clear. It passed on first reading. It did not rescind in any way the former sidewalk public way ordinance that we passed just 7 years ago this month, almost to the day that this one passed on first reading. So this amendment is to that ordinance, and it's coming back in the future. I checked with the clerk's office today, and they haven't scheduled it, but it'll be down the road a little bit. So we want to stay aware of it. And what it does essentially is it answers some of the questions we've all had with regard to sidewalks. Like, where does a sidewalk end? Where does it begin? It's defined in there. The sidewalk goes from the curb line to the property line, whether it be private or public. So if it's bricked and there's tables on it, it's still part of the sidewalk. And it also is restricted to an area and that is highly attainable for commerce, business, walking, and high utilization. So the pedestrian act, which is called the pedestrian activity zone, it extends from US 301, Washington Boulevard, the full length of Main Street to Tamiami. So that is a pedestrian activity zone, and also Palm Avenue from Ringling to Coconut. Now you can imagine that there were a lot of people who said, well, wait a minute, that's not a big enough area. It's gotta be bigger than that. 20 and if you would go to the March 29th agenda, the agenda was published on March 29th with a very good memo from Bob Fournier, which explained why we're doing it this way as a first step to preserve our right to be able to do this and show that we need it and it is successful and it will meet the legal challenges that we suppose it might come up, may not, because it's so well written. It also restricts the hours from 10 a.m. to midnight. So it's not a 24-hour exclusion ordinance. And it also is able to be, there's an enforcement provision in there. I think we were all amazed when Interim Chief Trichet was here, and he said, you know, my officers give these people a warning. They get up and are compliant and move down the street to the next block. We have to give them a new warning before we can do anything. Well, in this ordinance, that won't happen. The warning travels with the person if need be. This is a very well thought out ordinance, and I think we really do need it. I would like to make a motion that regarding this ordinance, which is 22-5413. And I'd like to move that the DSCA Board of Directors approve sending a letter of support and giving oral testimony at the City Commission meeting where this ordinance has its second reading. And I'm doing that so that the action shall support the amendment as it is presently proposed, or with those changes deemed appropriate and added during second reading. Let me just say that the Fournier was asked to go back and look at expanding the hours, expanding the pedestrian activity, expanding a little bit some of the clarity on enforcement and so forth. And he will bring back some of that. And yes, Ken.
Peter, what was the vote? Was it a unanimous vote?
4-1.
4-1.
Yeah.
Okay, because otherwise, if it were unanimous vote, it would end up in the consent agenda.
Right. Well, and the one vote was, yeah, I understood the vote, but it was, yeah, it was a little bit of an iffy vote, I thought, where the person could support it, but had enough leanings that I suspect if some of these things get re-talked about at second reading, the vote may become unanimous.
Well, if your motion is on the table, I'll second.
Okay.
Peter, when is the second reading?
Well, we don't know. I checked with the clerk's office today. It's not at the next meeting and probably won't be at the following meeting, but it's coming back in a fairly near future.
The reason I asked, I'm not familiar with what they passed in the first reading. And if it's delayed enough for the second reading, I wonder if we could vote on this at the next meeting so we have a chance to actually see what it is we're voting on.
That's fine. I think if you go to the today's Herald Tribune, did a support of the amendment. I think if you look at the discussion or you want more information, I can provide it to you.
I would just be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Although I have no doubt of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can chime in that Peter and I attended in person and watched.
Kathy was there for as long as you could hang out.
Kathy was there, and I would echo this idea that it seemed measured and thoughtful, and
I watched it on television.
Yeah, and I would say that it was very helpful if you can just go back in and view the video portion of that. It's not that long, and they do a really good job. Fournier did a really good job explaining his reasoning.
I'll do that.
And I didn't finish the motion entirely. I'd like to finish that. So I'd like the support to be for the ordinance that was proposed and support for the audience, the ordinance at second reading, and those changes deemed appropriate and added during the second reading by an affirmative vote of the commission. Because we're not going to get a chance to, after the second reading, to come back and support it. We've got to support it at the second reading. And so there may be some reasonable additions to this, although I think they'll be very minimal given the caution that the city attorney was making.
This further discussion, there's a motion on the table.
And a second. Ken, a second.
Yeah.
While I am generally in support of that, I have not read it. This was not a motion that was put in the agenda. This was not a motion that the backup motion was not provided to us in the backup material. So like Alan, I am not prepared to vote on this and I'm off to vote no. But please proceed.
I think that we're well within Robert's rules to provide a motion at an open meeting that hasn't been briefed. However, the only reason I'm bringing it up this way is I was fearful that it might end up on second reading before we met again. And we've faced this dilemma before. Something gets said at the city commission and they bring it back and we have not said a word. We've been silent on it because we couldn't get through our own bureaucratic process to support it.
Well, my personal view on this is, having seen the process and seen the thoughtfulness on this and the concern I believe our residents and county members have about this matter, that I would err on the side of supporting the motion and giving Peter or whomever to speak in support or write. The motion is to write in support of this.
Let me see if I can address Patrick's concern in the motion.
Well, my concerns have nothing to do with the text
I
of the motion.
understand, but let me see if I can.
With the process that we're being faced to make a vote here, not having presented this, so it could have been added yesterday.
So let me make up for my failing for not getting this out in time. So let me amend my motion to include what I've just said and add the caveat, at least, that if it has not come up for second reading by the time of the next meeting, we will reaffirm this vote that we're taking in case it comes up before the next meeting, the second reading.
I accept the addition to it.
You just say it again. I think I accept it. Just say it again.
I accepted the addition to it.
And I'll get as much material out as I can to you, and I'll tell you where.
So you're saying that the approval is based on the assumption that it might happen before our next meeting. And it doesn't, we vote again in May.
We can reaffirm our vote or change our vote at that.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Can
opposed?
Would you give this to Jude?
And Roger, yay or nay, Roger? No.
Abstain,
Okay.
abstain.
Okay, so motion passes whatever. What did we get?
Judy, I'll need to add the caveat to it.
Yeah.
What's
Peter
the-
gave me something he had already written out, which now can be edited a bit to add
The
the
caveat.
qualification you said about time in terms of the second reading. You would do that, I appreciate it. Okay.
So what's the vote? And I understood Roger was abstaining.
Yeah,
Well,
abstaining.
we're gonna say no, I'll just abstain too because of lack of information.
Okay. So Judy, I'll help you with the count then.
Okay.
Peter, anything?
No, I just,
I
thought
think
you
it's
were asking.
9-2 abstentions.
Okay. Okay, that's all from the homeless.
Patrick made a comment about parts and proposals, And I just want to clarify that I am developing a concept plan. I don't want to get out ahead of stakeholders who have a strong interest in this. So we have some more meeting to do with people who have strong feelings about how you use parks and activate parks and stuff. So the concept addresses that far, but we haven't had full inclusion for an inclusive park discussion yet. So it'll be coming back to work.
Okay, Health and Safety Committee. I guess that has become.
Yeah, you know what, when we were talking about getting more people involved and whatever, I was going to interject, and I would like to be able to maybe take a look at these committees, the way that they are laid out here, because I think that it should be a fluid, some of these overlap.
Okay.
So maybe we would add that to an agenda for next
Okay.
time.
All right. On health and safety, I think we all know that there was an approval recently to hire 10 new police officers, 8 of whom are to be foot patrol, whatever the right name is. It's expensive, but certainly the hope is that is going to, in concert with maybe the sit and lie ordinance and other interpretations of things, might be of some benefit. Certainly, and concentrated on downtown and Roseberry is what they are talking about.
David, this may overlap the homeless committee too, but I live across the street where the sheriff's deputy shot and killed the squatter at Palm Place this week. And I have to say, it was impressive. The police response was unbelievable. There were about 8 or 10 police cars there within seconds of the event happening, and they closed off half a block of the street at both ends and proceeded. It was just unbelievable. But then, day before yesterday, there was a demonstration on the street in front of Palm Place by a group saying, let's have a moratorium on evictions and rent control now. I thought, where on earth did this group come from? It was a group of young people of about maybe 15 or 20, and they were there for over an hour, and they had a whole program set up, and it went on, and it was really well organized.
Welcome to social media.
Honest to God, I couldn't believe it.
You know, I could add just a little, you know, we had a murder across the street at the boat launch. We had a murder roughly across from Wicked Cantina. I happened to be at Wicked Cantina the night they found the second body. And the police response was the same. They had a tent set up over the area, and it was really well handled. But the good news is they made an arrest. Both of the people were between housing and well known to the homeless community. In fact, one of the victims was well known at the Salvation Army and has been on the street roughly 15 years. But the arrest was made for her murder, and the police believe that the same person, perpetrator, is also responsible for the second murder.
All right, Transportation Committee, Roger.
All right. Well,
How about those roundabouts?
this is really going to be fun, but the trolley appears to be a grand success. It is truly fun to ride. I've been on it 3 times now, taking the entire route. They had almost 12,000 people in the first month, and it goes past my condo about every 20 to 25 minutes, and oftentimes it's full with people standing. It appears again to be a grand success. Now, the scooters and the bikes have just started. They had 1,200 rentals the first week. I've been informed by my wife that I cannot ride a scooter, that I'm not permitted to do so, and that I will not participate in that process. We will see how that goes. Now, for the fun part, of course, is the Gulfstream Roundabout construction. Good news, they are evidently on time with October or November completion. If you've been a bit concerned about the traffic, let me at least give you some background information. In the summer, Longboat Key has a population of about 7,000 people. Prior to COVID, it had a population in season of around 21,000. It's obvious this year it has exceeded that. This appears to be the worst year for traffic congestion that we've seen. We don't know if that will continue or if it won't, but it's been pain, and hopefully next year it will be somewhat smoother. I predict that my stoplight at Sunset Towers will be the next pain in the process next year. End of transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, I spoke with Mark Lyons, the parking manager at the farmers market when they had the VO folks there. And they have a whole program, explain the whole program for keeping the scooters in the fenced areas. But if there's any problems that exist where you find the scooters are on the sidewalks or areas where they're not supposed to be, let Mark know at the parking department, because they are trying to stay on top of it, track it, et cetera. So he just said they did want to know.
That'd be a good use for the, where you take a picture, you know,
Yep.
the city.
Well, I asked him about that. He says, well, yeah, but he also wants to be sure he gets it too. So, yes.
Did they say how they charge those things?
What's it?
How do they charge them?
I
don't know that. I mean, the battery.
Yeah.
They have a Pennzoil van that they come out and they have batteries that they take out and they.
They
take it out of
replace
the
it.
scooter, they just replace.
They just replace it. I was gonna say, they're everywhere. They're so ubiquitous. They're like
Roger,
no seams.
Roger, I can attest to, I rode the scooter twice last week. Scooters
Yeah.
in our building. It was great fun. I mean, I almost want to take a scooter out for no reason other than just to cruise around the city. And it seemed very safe.
It's great.
And it was easy to,
Bikes look very safe.
it was easy to run.
Would you speak to my wife?
All right.
Hey, Mark, did you wear a helmet?
Give her my number.
Okay.
No, I did not wear a helmet. I have a bike helmet I could be wearing, but I felt pretty safe without it. I mean, you're not going very fast and
Okay.
so, of course, it's still.
Ted, is it a burning matter, please?
Yeah, the scooter matter, this doesn't apply to Clark, I realize, but there is a rule that you have to be 18 years of age. And we're having problems with teenagers and younger riding them through downtown a lot. And the other problem is they're not supposed to have them after 10 o'clock at night. And we're having them at all hours of the night riding through the town. So keep that in mind when you call Mark.
Okay.
Well, you need to have the app when you get on a bike and at a certain time, the app shuts down.
Okay. At CCNA on Saturday, Marlon said there was a mechanism where they could unactivate them at 10.
Right, and they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, well, at least they have a capability to do that.
Yeah, they turn it off at some time because I've gone on to look at the map.
Okay. All right. EV charger.
Yeah, just very briefly, the surveys went out. We got 7 responses of people who have actually installed them. And they were very good about it because they included a lot of data about cost, vendors, supplemental vendors, how they're used. A lot of other people responded and said, yes, we intend to, but we haven't yet. And a handful, a small number, said, no, we really have no current plans. So Patrick and I are gonna get together and we're gonna figure out how to collate this information into something that's actually readable.
And if we have something presentable on the 10th of February, March.
Yeah, at the technology thing, we're gonna get this to, and his name escapes me now.
Chris Sharp. Yeah.
Chris, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Zoning, no reports, there are things that I can think of. Bay Park, Bob?
Bay Park, they had a board meeting this past the 15th. Essentially, they're going to have a soft opening for phase 1 in August and a hard opening on October 10th of this year. They've also changed the zoning for Centennial Park to be the same zoning as the Bay Park property is itself. Basically, everything's coming along really well. What's interesting for us, because we're close to 10th Street, where the Coast Guard station is, they're planning an improvement so that it can handle 4 or 5 food trucks. And there are talks about putting in a pickleball court in that general area also. So, and they're planning improvements. The improvements to the park are going to be the perimeter primarily because of the Performing Arts Hall. But they have funding from FDOT to do improvements on Tamiami Trail. They have additional funding to do improvements. I believe it's a grant along the walkways on the waterfront. That's improve the walkways, the seating, and the lighting.
2 days ago, they started the improvements along 41.
Yeah.
They dug up the lawn that has.
I of course encourage anyone. I think most people have walked through there at one time or another. It's truly impressive.
We went over there on the trolley with Jenny Rowe, and it was dramatic.
Yeah.
The difference between what's been done and the parking lot at the way. So it was dramatic. Really.
You know, the playground is coming out of the ground. The footings have been poured for the Ibis playground. And no, it's just wonderful. In fact, we're talking here about putting in a kayak rack in our garage, since kayak launch is literally across the street.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ted, CCNA, anything?
Yeah, we had a meeting last Saturday. I guess the city commission passed the tree ordinance also. The final
First reading.
For those first readings going through, so you might want to stay on top of that a little bit. They had an extensive presentation from the planning department, Steve Culver's area, on this missing middle overlay district that they're talking about putting in on the other side of 301. I don't know if that's going to creep any or not, but it would be a great boon for us to have more of that type of housing in order to have more of our service workers that we need in downtown. So right now, I got the feeling after, I don't know if you did or not, David, that they weren't totally prepared for all the questions that came at them from especially Ron Collins. But it's something that we should be watching just a little bit.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. So
that was a great discussion.
Okay. That's it? Okay. On the Rosemary District, the park is proceeding to from 3 concepts to 1, more or less 1, in the coming 10 days. At the city commission meeting a couple weeks ago, there was about $265,000 in park impact fees earmarked for the park. Now we know 265 grand isn't going to be enough, but it's all that was in the kitty, as I understand. But they did discuss it. It's kind of telling to me that allocation of 265 grand only passed 3-2. There were 2 commissioners who had amnesia about previous discussions and kind of commitments.
Who voted no?
Hagan and Aurora and Hagan. Again, this idea that the Bay Park is close enough came up. That was an argument that was there 3 years ago, seemed to disappear. At any rate, it's moving ahead. On Boulevard of the Arts and 10th, I understand that the city has their survey results from that ready. They're going to present to the RDA board next week. We could have gotten, we were late in the cycle to get a presentation. And I am also told that they do have some initial cross sections of Boulevard of the Arts at least done for initial input sometime soon. I haven't seen anything, but it seems like both on the park and the streetscape efforts, there is a degree of progress, and I'd like to feel some momentum. That said, Platinum Associates news highlights. Chris?
Yeah, I think there's just a few of us today, so I'm gonna go last, and I see Donna's here, so Donna with Cadence Bank, you wanna go first?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for, again, this meeting. There's so much information that's going on downtown in the city with the different laws and regulations. It's just interesting to hear, especially not being from the city, but being active in other activities there. It's really informative. So thank you for your time and all your effort and what the committee does. Cadence Bank is here for you in all kinds of aspects. We're actually really looking forward to the May 10th technology workshop, to be there, to be part of the panel and to answer any of the questions that you and anyone else is attending about what's going on in the industry, technology-wise, and some of the other stuff about loans and things that are happening.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else on?
Thank you.
Not here anymore.
Okay, I thought Donna was there.
Somebody was there.
Okay, thank you, Donna. We have Jen, another gold
Another
member.
member.
Go ahead and go.
Hi, I'm Jen with Fifth Third Bank. A couple of three meetings, I think now. So very excited to be a part of this. I love the downtown area, frequent it often, and work right at 5 Points. So appreciate all the information here and all the work that you do for downtown Sarasota. I'm here to help with any lending or deposit needs any associations may have. We can also come out and do some educational presentations to boards on lending for condo associations, if that's ever anything that you're interested in. We have a national property management employee who very well versed, very well, very knowledgeable in the area of associations and lending. So we'd be happy to do that if you're interested.
The name Fifth Third.
Yes. Fifth National Bank and the Third National Bank of Ohio merged together to form Fifth Third. Everyone always jokes that it's probably at the corner of Fifth and Third, but if you know Fifth and Third would never cross that way. So that's where it comes from. So thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
I like it. Thanks for coming. So I'll go last. I'm Kristen Forey, the liaison for the events committee and the associate members. My company is Core Marketing Solutions. I have a portfolio of clients. You've all heard about them over and over because I keep talking about them. But I'd like to talk about what's new with them. CBIZ Insurance. We're going to do something different since the 2022 legislative session was no bueno. They didn't pass hardly anything. I think maybe 5 bills got passed that sort of relate to our condo association industry. So since there's no other insurance people in the room, I had this great idea to get my attorney together with CBIZ Insurance. They're going to do a legal and insurance update and combine it because camps like me need their license renewal credits anyway. So we got to listen to something for an hour. So it'll be very short again because not much passed. I'm really disappointed in what happened after Surfside. I was hoping that they would kind of, get something done, but they didn't. So that's that. I'm excited that Right Way Emergency Services is going to be on the panel. They're going to have a quick little snippet of their Matterport system. We're just inside of 60 days for hurricane season. Did you guys know that? So if you don't have your disaster plan yet, get with Right Way. They'll come out and do it for free for the DSCA. And then what's new with professional plumbing is, and we're sorry we couldn't make the great event that you had this month because we had a big trade show. And I represented professional plumbing at their table this year. They've got something exciting. It's called the Everlast Elevate Electric Water Heater. I had to try to talk to people about this thing. I know nothing about this kind of stuff. So I'm asking my husband, he's like, oh, it's a 55-gallon unit that packs 100 with the access of 100-gallon tank. So I got this whole education on this thing. Basically, if you want to replace your 80 or 100-gallon tank, you might be able to for a little bit longer, but you won't get the warranty. They're discontinuing those. So I won't tell you, I won't go into politics on who's responsible for that, but it's actually, it goes up that far up the ladder. So this 55-gallon tank is pretty cool, and that's something new that they're doing. Also do pipelining. Socotec, Terry couldn't make it tonight. I will tell you what's new there, and I can't disclose the name of the condo. Write it down. in Sarasota downtown. There's a building that they found, it could have been, and I'm not talking about the 101, by the way, which that's kind of a disaster going on now. But this is a different building. They found some really structural issues in the garage that could have been catastrophic. Thank God they found it, but it's gonna cost a lot more money. So they were toggling between an association loan or special assess. So they're gonna special assess. So, you know, another reason to keep your reserves had it because you don't know what they're gonna find. So the only thing I can say there is with reserves, you can get a calculation guy to come in and an international company that does these calculations for your useful life, how long your products are gonna last, what it's gonna cost to replace or repair. Don't do that. Get an engineer that looks at the place because they wouldn't have found that on one of those calculations. So that's it. Thanks for having us.
All right. Okay, last comments from member representatives. Jim, anybody have any?
Yeah, the only comment I would add to David's story about the Rosemary District. We're going to have a big blowout for the new park on the 23rd for the neighbors, and we're going to be offering free food and some free drinks, and we're going to take down the fence right before that. The strategy is that if we structure it and program it and we claim the park right after we take down the fence, we could set a stake in the ground so that we won't be inundated by homeless people right away. So we're trying to take ownership with the RDA and with Dream Large. So that's it's going to be a big thing 2-3 Saturdays from now.
And with that, any other final remarks?
Did you say what
I
time
just
that was?
remind people that these are here, if you want to help yourself to these Urbanite theater promotions.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, our next meeting is May the 4th, same time, same place. So we look forward to seeing everybody then. We stand adjourned. Thank you.